Hi, I'm Dr. Steve Vargo, and this is episode 28 of Can I Ask You One Question, where we dive into the minds of industry experts and thought leaders, and we try to learn one critical thing from them. And it's typically something that we can apply to our professional and maybe even our personal lives. And I have with me here today HIPAA compliance expert, Heather Irving, who is Director of Customer Success for Abyde, a company that many, as we were just talking, many ODs now use to make sure that they remain HIPAA compliant. So hello, Heather.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Heather, I think doctors have somewhat of a love-hate relationship with online reviews. A positive review can be great marketing. A negative review can be damaging to the practice and the brand. Sometimes a practice earns that negative review, but there's also times where perhaps there was maybe a misunderstanding or the patient isn't exactly being true to the facts. And the office many times feels compelled to reply. And that might not be as big of a problem in some other industries, but in healthcare, we have this thing called HIPAA.
Yep.
So my question to you, Heather, from a HIPAA compliance standpoint, how can I reply to a negative online review without violating HIPAA?
Yeah, and that is such a great question and one that we get asked a lot. Social media is something that is here to stay. It's not going away, and it keeps getting more complex as it goes on. But really, and a lot of times practices aren't aware that there are rules, and that there are rules to follow when it comes to responding to that review. We actually worked with two practices last year that received investigations from the Office of Civil Rights because of some online responses. And it's the patients that are filing those complaints. So, patient posts a negative review, doctor gets upset, wants to, defend the practice, which totally I get, defend your practice, but that patient or those two patients ultimately went and filed complaints and they were investigated. So our recommendation is always going to be vague. We don't encourage people not to respond to the reviews, because sometimes, patients might look at you not responding in a negative light. So we always recommend, hey, respond to the review, but do so very vaguely, not using the patient's name, not acknowledging maybe what they've stated in the review. Hey, doctor, you really helped me with my prescription, or you helped me get those great new glasses. Don't acknowledge, hey, it was great, helping you get that prescription and those new glasses picked out. But a lot of times when it comes to those negative reviews, you have to take a position of don't be defensive, but encourage the reviewer to, maybe reach out to the office. So we've come up with some examples of responses to use. So just to kind of throw a couple at you, waiting times, probably everyone's biggest sore. I scheduled an appointment and I had to wait over an hour to see the doctor, and they just spew it all. Saying, oh, we're sorry, your appointment, your experience was unsatisfactory. Let us know how we can make it better next time. Doesn't seem like you've really kind of acknowledged the patient, but that is not a compliant way to respond, unfortunately. The best way to respond would be, our policy is to schedule plenty of time. We try to meet those scheduling demands. We value your feedback. Call our office if you have any questions. Same with, if a patient says, I had a really great time, Dr. Vargo, you were great. My family loves coming to see you. You immediately want to say, oh, I love your family too, right? But again, you want to not acknowledge the patient, not acknowledge, their name, that they actually came to your practice, but, thanking them for their feedback. We strive to make every experience exceptional. And I think the biggest thing I can probably recommend, especially when it comes to negative reviews, is responding. We strive to make everyone's experience exceptional. Please reach out to our office if you'd like to discuss. Plain, simple, you're not getting into it. there was a dental practice this past year that got into it pretty aggressively with a patient online, and then said doctor ignored the OCR, and it turned into a very large fine for them. And they even acknowledged in their responses that they should be allowed to say whatever they want. Freedom of speech, right? But unfortunately, freedom of speech does not apply to HIPAA. And so you have to stay within those guidelines in order to remain compliant.
It's probably handling things the way things should have always been handled, but now there's a regulatory umbrella around it. And it's hard to win these things anyway. Even if HIPAA wasn't a factor, I think the approach probably has always been the best approach anyway, to be vague and try to take it offline. But, sometimes it's at the 24-hour rule, or just breathe before you reply. It's going to be very, emotions are going to take over.
Correct.
But now, like I said, I think that still exists, but I think people need to be aware of the HIPAA aspect of it too, because I don't think they really push the limits on that, and sometimes jump right over that line that protects people's personal information.
Yep. And patients don't understand that they don't understand when they're in the midst of writing that review, that the information they've just released is their own PHI. And it doesn't matter if a patient says those things, but as the doctor, you can't be responding back with the same information, because you've then breached, that line of confidentiality, basically. Another, good recommendation is have the same person in your office responsible for responding to those reviews. Have a set, blanket set of responses that you want to use, for every review, and just continue to do that over and over again. People that are coming to your website and reading your reviews, they're going to see past those one or two negative reviews, especially with however you respond to it. And we've seen that over time, that, if a practice takes, the high road, so to say, and their response to a negative review, a future patient is going to see past that negative review, and they're going to see all the positive reviews. Same with the positive reviews, taking, that same vague concept of thank you for your feedback, plain and simple. But I think a lot of times some practices might have a lot of hands in the pot, so to say, and they've got a bunch of different people responding. I no dig against the doctors, but doctors sometimes, or the owners of the practice, might not want to be the ones responsible for responding to the reviews. That's where some of those emotions build up. So again, having a designated person responding to those reviews is something that we highly recommend. The OCR would look at that as well, that you've got a designated person responding to those reviews. Not everybody can do whatever they want, because they're looking for consistency as well, to make sure that you're following those rules and you have the right people in place to do so.
Yeah. And I've seen even good replies as far as the verbiage goes, because people have sent me replies below and said, hey, we got this negative review. How does this sound? And they were trying to word it in a way that actually was very diplomatic. But then I looked at it and thought, I don't think you can put that. I've sent you things before, so
Yes.
you know what we're talking about.
Yep.
But yeah, no, this was great. I think doctors and their offices need to hear this too, and really think before they hit send on some of the replies.
Yes.
Heather, this is just a small part of what you guys do at Abyde. Where can people find out more? You guys have been great partners with us. I told, we were saying before, I think you guys have done a fantastic job with taking something very complex and making it as simple as possible. Highly encourage people to, if you're not using a system for HIPAA compliance, to look into Abyde. How do people find out more about that?
Yeah, great question. So they can visit www.abyde.com. There you can find more about our solutions. You can book a demo with us, a consultation. We're big on education here at Abyde, so we're not trying to sell you something. We want you to know and understand what HIPAA is, and then we just have a really awesome solution that goes along with it, to take some of that complexity out and off your desk and really streamline the process for you. And, you know, along the lines of the online reviews, one of the things that we've actually developed here was an online response policy. And it was something that the OCR, when these two practices were being investigated, they sent that to the OCR as part of their corrective action plan. And they were pretty impressed with it. Not to toot our own horn, but it's something that a lot of people haven't thought about because HIPAA still is, you know, a little bit archaic, and when the policies were written and things like that. So that's one of the things that we do here is we really look at what's happening, what's going on out there, and how can we continue to make that easier.
Awesome. We'll keep up the great work. Well, thanks so much, Heather. And we'll close out with that. So thank you, Heather,
Awesome.
and thanks everyone for listening. You can, as always, find the show notes for this and all previous episodes at drstevevargo.com. So we will see you next time.
Thank you.